Okay, there it is. Now we live. Not sure what happened there, but all's well that ends well. Let's get it started. Let's get it started. Let me see. Love Alchemist is live. There we go. All right. Let's pump that up. Y'all do me a favor as you come in, share this video. Looks like they changed the look a little bit. That's different, but I take it. As you come in, family, do me a favor and share this video. Let me see, share. And I'm doing the same. Let's see, where are we at? Yeah, that's a new look. I'm not used to that one. He said, "What's up, pretty boy? What's good, family?" I'm not trying to be cute on them. You know what I mean? How you doing, Black? Get a family a chance to come on in, man. Yeah, as y'all come in, do me a favor, hit that like button and share this video. Invite a friend, and let's see if we can get us an interesting conversation going this evening. See if we can get us an interesting conversation going on. I got the Instagram family in here too. What's up, Blissfully Blue? How you doing, family? Let's see. Tonight's topic, man. This is an interesting topic. I had a different topic picked out, but me and my wife started talking last night, and this one just kind of came up, and we're gonna talk about. Excuse me. We're gonna talk a little bit about mom versus dad, or mothers versus fathers, and how winners create losers. So do me a favor as you come in, share this video, and let me see. And I'm doing the same thing, kind of giving the family a minute or two to come on in, and we're gonna get it started. See if we can have us an interesting conversation about this. Uh-oh, I didn't mean to do that. It don't look the same. They changed the live a little bit, so I'm not sure exactly how this is. It's a little different now, so it's giving me a little bit of a challenge. I'm not used to it this way, but that's all right. We're gonna do it anyway. Chandra, good evening, family. How you doing? Like I said, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video, family, and we're giving the family a little bit of time to come on in and join us, because I don't know, man. I just think we can. This is a good conversation. I think we're in the middle of some challenging times, and I think it's going to demand us to move very different than what we've kind of grown used to doing. I think the times are demanding kind of a cultural shift or a change in cultural ideology. So I think these are some good conversations to start having. Let me see. Man, I had a thought I wanted to share. Let me promote this book real quick. This show was brought to, I know the Instagram family can't see this, but I'm promoting the Heart Work book. This show is brought to you in part by the Heart Work book, 31 Days to Mastering Your Relationship. This is a book that my wife and I wrote together, and it's as the title says, 31 Days to Mastering Your Relationship. It's a book for couples, and my wife and I wrote it together. So 30 plus years of marital experience, successes and failures, and ideas about how to take your marriage to the next level, right? And so, and I think we're in that time. I think this topic tonight kind of deals with that a little bit. So head on over to www.theconditionsoflove.com and get your copy. Let me show the Instagram family real quick. That's what the book looks like. That's the book cover. www.theconditionsoflove.com. Going to get your copy. And we talk about the conditions of love, right? Because people are out here looking for unconditional love. But that doesn't exist. Like I say all the time, that only exists in puppies. That's about as close as you're going to get. And I sell puppies too, if you need that. We sell Doberman Pinscher puppies, and we got a litter coming this fall for you if you need unconditional love. But if you're looking for something a little more realistic, like what you get with a man and a woman, you're going to have to know the conditions. It's rules to this game, baby. It's rules to this game. Ain't no such thing out here as unconditional love. My man Black says, Good looking book. James Bush says, good topic. Nice looking book. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Let's see. It's midnight here, so I might have to catch the replay. I want to drop by and support. Man, I appreciate that, brother. Appreciate that. Do your thing, man. I know how France is. You know, what you 7-8 hours ahead of me. So definitely dig it. I'll catch you tomorrow. We're going live tomorrow together. My lovely mother is in the building. Good evening, mother. How are you? As always, my wonderful wife is here. So let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. And let's see what we can come up with. So this title, like I said, me and my wife were sitting around talking. I had a different idea. You know, we were going to do a different show. And this topic came up. We're talking about mom versus dad, how winners create losers. Now that almost sounds like an oxymoron, right? But if you think in terms of mom versus dad, you know, that's like a competition. There's conflict going on, and if there's conflict between mom and dad, somebody's winning, right? And if somebody's winning, then that means somebody's losing. And this is going to affect the children, right? So if there's a large enough disparity between winning and losing, especially if there's a consistent loser, if mom is consistently losing, or if dad is consistently losing, this type of environment sets the children up to lack balance, right? So let me jump into a couple of things that excuse me, I got a little bit of indigestion, family, pardon me. So I think we got to start thinking in terms of what it means to raise these children, right? Because we're not simply raising children. We're not just raising children. We're raising husbands and wives. We're raising somebody's mother and somebody's father. And so what we're doing in this is we're trying to pour into them the best balance that we can come up with, right? And so in order for that to be the type of arrangement that we're looking for, as to the best of our abilities, we kind of need to show up to this arrangement as healthy as we can be, and that's not always the case, right? I told my story many times, and I didn't show up as healthy as I could be, and that took a lot of work on myself. So a lot of us, man, we got to get that work. We got to do that self-reflection, and sometimes coaching, sometimes counseling, right? But the ultimate goal, you know, like we said, is to is to present our children with the healthiest versions of ourselves that we can. Black says, Pete said dad already won. Yeah, Pete and Pete's, yeah, Pete, let Pete tell it. The dad always wins, right? So just kind of getting back into it a little bit. One of the things that I think we tend to overlook, so many people overlook, is that marriage really isn't for the parents. Marriage really is primarily an institution for the children, right? It's primarily for the children, and it's not that it's not also something there for us, like, but we're secondary. It's secondarily for us, primarily for the children, secondarily for us as parents. We're supposed to have fun too, but of course not at the expense of the children, and ultimately the priority is the children's well-being, right? So the question I have, I guess, is how do parents conflict, mom versus dad, create losers? How does this conflict create losers in the children? And I thought about, I'm glad my mother's here, because it just reminded me of a story of when, you know, I hated vegetables when I was a child, right? I hated vegetables. And the only way I would eat my vegetables would be if Alicia says, say what? What are you talking about, Alicia? What you got a problem with? What did I say that you got a problem with? You pass down the same behavior. Yep, that's a fact. You do. So let me get back to this. When I was a child, I hated vegetables, but I love sugar. I hated vegetables, but I love sugar. And we lived with my grandparents, me and my mother, my little brother, and we lived with my grandmother and my grandfather. And we my grandfather was very stern, a very stern disciplinarian. And like most women, women are tilted more toward, or I should say mothers are tilted more towards mercy, and they tend to be a little higher in agreeableness. And men tend to be a little bit more tilted toward the disciplinarian. And ideally, we would be an encouraging disciplinarian, but men tend to, and this is general, right? Because we know that women can also be more disciplinarian and men can be a little bit more merciful. But generally speaking, in the majority of the scenarios, the women tend to be a little higher in agreeableness and a little bit more tilted toward mercy, while the fathers tend to be a little bit more of an encouraging disciplinarian. And that's necessary, right? Because if you think about what's required from a mother, especially in those early stages when the baby is crying all the time and sometimes colicky and won't go to sleep, that type of compassion for that, all that excess crying, and sometimes what men tend to process as crying for nothing. Mothers tend to be a lot more accommodating in that scenario than fathers are. Fathers don't tend to have quite as much patience for those early stages, and those in those early stages, mothers need the child needs a parent who's a little bit more merciful and a little bit more understanding and accommodating and a softer disposition, right? So it's natural that mothers would lean more toward being merciful, or more merciful and more agreeable than fathers would. And fathers tend to come in on the backside of that, or the complementary side of that, with encouraging disciplinary type of atmosphere that we offer, right? Alicia says marriage is for the kids. Yeah. If you think about it generally, and all the statistics bear this out, right? If you look at what happens to children and their performance when they come from a single parent household versus a household that, let me put that back up there. Where we at? Marriage for, yeah. When children come from a household that is two parents, both parents, especially biological parents, when both parents are biological parents, they perform far and away much better than, or far and above, much better than children who come from single parent households. And so just the structure of what a two parent household provides is second to none as far as the impact on a child's life. So the institution of marriage, of course, like I said, the couple definitely is supposed to benefit from that, but the primary reason for that is the healthy nurturing and the healthy rearing of children. That's the primary reason for marriage. And of course, there are all other kinds of benefits and advantages that you can get from that, but the primary reason for that is for the healthy rearing and of children. Quasi Black says balance. Absolutely. And Black says, yes, because I want to lay down the law. Yeah. We tend to be much more oriented toward what's the law. So getting back to the story that I was talking about with my mother and my grandfather, because my father wasn't there. I didn't see him nearly as much. So my grandfather was the masculine presence in our home. And I hated vegetables, man. And it would be greens or peas or string beans, whatever it was. It was always something green on the plate. And I didn't like it. But I love sugar. I would put sugar on bread. I would put sugar in milk. I would put sugar in water. I would put sugar on my life. I put sugar in everything, right? And the only way I would eat my greens is if I was allowed to sprinkle a little sugar on the greens. Smash that like button, family. Smash that like button, share this video, and invite a friend, right? So if I was able to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on my greens, or on my string beans, or my lima beans, whatever it was, then I would eat them with no problem. And my grandfather hated that. Boy, you don't need no sugar on them greens. Just eat them straight up. Eat them just like they are. You don't need to put sugar on them greens. And my mother would say, oh, Daddy, let the boy put sugar on the greens. If that's what it takes for him to eat them, let him put sugar on the greens, right? And I remember this clear as day. And inside I would be smiling like, yes, I win, right? I win. And my grandfather, he wouldn't put up much of a fight after he said what he said. He would be, you kind of hear him just grunt, like mumble a little bit, but he would be gone from it. and all my mother cared was that I ate the greens or the string beans or whatever the vegetable was. So in that time, I'm thinking I win, right? As a child. When I was a child, I thought as a child, right? As I look back on it though, that sternness, that rigid structure, that disciplinarian factor that my grandfather was offering was actually very necessary. I wasn't supposed to put sugar on my greens or on my string beans, right? And so that softening, that soft, nurturing, and merciful and agreeable spirit that my mother brought to the table kind of overshadowed what my grandfather was trying to offer. But my grandfather, several generations older and much more disconnected, and so there wasn't much of a conversation between the two of them when that happened. But in hindsight, I realize now, especially understanding a little bit more about the body and health and all of that, how detrimental that was that I'm sprinkling sugar. I mean, I get enough sugar in the cookies and the snacks and the Kool-Aid and all this stuff. My grandfather wanted me to have sound nutrition. My mother, I don't think she was quite thinking about it like that. She was just like, hey, just whatever it takes for this boy to eat his greens, let him do that, right? Grandfather, stern, this is what you're supposed to do. Mama, hey, be flexible, let him do what he's supposed to do. In the end, though, here I am now, of course, and I'm not blaming nobody. I'm a grown man, but I'm saying ultimately it fed into my craving for sugar. I'm eating tons and tons of sugar. So ultimately, this was mom versus granddad in this scenario. Mom wins rather than a healthier compromise. And ultimately, me as a child, I ended up, not doing as good as I could have done. And my mom was a very young mom at the time too. So we all, as we learn, we grow, right? But the point I'm making is when there's conflict between the parents, if there's not a healthy solution worked out between the two, the child often ends up being the one who loses, right? And there's various ways that parents undermine each other. Sometimes mothers undermine fathers' authority or presence in the relationship with the child. Sometimes fathers will undermine mothers and their authority or position in the life of the child. And so there were times where I did that to my wife because I didn't have the type of understanding and even I didn't have a soft spot or even a spirit of compassion for what it was that my wife brought to the table. I didn't have a healthy respect. That's a better word. I didn't have a healthy respect for what she brought, that nurturing aspect. And so many times I was so, in my mind, I was so domineering and wanting things to go the way I thought they should go that I often overshadowed how she felt like things should go. And in hindsight, I look at some of these scenarios and I'm like, man, she had a really good point, especially when we talk about things in reverse, right? So ultimately, I guess what I'm getting at is that in these scenarios, we tend to, as parents undermine each other in many ways, ultimately what we're undermining is the child's highest and best good and ultimately their best possible outcomes, right? And this is why it's so important for us to be on one accord, man, on one accord as parents. So let's say Black says, then the love alchemy guy, man, listen, that this love alchemy piece, man, it has definitely brought me a long way, man. I learned a lot. And I tell you, it has definitely opened my eyes. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the ways that parents undermine each other, and ultimately how as we have this mom versus dad dynamic, the children are losing. I had a friend at work. We were talking about this earlier today at work, and the brother was telling me about how his high school friend's father died, and when his father died, he left him like $100,000, something like that. And the kid was in high school, so he bought him a brand new Cadillac. He had all of the the latest gear on, a lot of Tommy Hilfiger and stuff like that, and he had all this stuff, right? So fast forward some years later, my buddy said he saw him a couple years ago, and the brother was working some menial job. I forget, but it was a low wage job that he was working at. And as they were catching up, he was like, "Man, I wish I would have did more." My buddy's an electrician. He said, "Man, my dad was an electrician. I wish I would have done more of what, of what my dad was doing, and ultimately what you're doing, right? Because I spent all that money. I didn't have the structure. I didn't have the guidance, and I went out here and I spent all this money instead of setting myself up." So what I'm getting at is, oftentimes what we're doing is we're creating children that are too soft for the hard life that's waiting on them. And so we tend to be governed by the pursuit of material things and things that make us feel better, and things that make us look better, but not necessarily things that make us better. Right. So my man had this guy's a sophomore and a junior in high school, had a brand new Cadillac, the short body. I think it was the sedan, the Coupe de Ville. Brand new Cadillac, all the latest Tommy Hilfiger gear, sharp. And this kid, fast forward several years later, I think he was making, this 40-year-old man, not 40-plus-year-old man, and he's making like, $12 an hour or so, and he's not feeling real good about where he is right now. So, I guess that's a long way of saying we're creating children that are too soft for what is really a hard life that's waiting on us, man. Let me see. Black says, "This is a good topic for new couples having children to prevent some mistakes, and for old to correct some things with current children to help them adjust for the sake of grandchildren." And that's a good point, man. That's where me and my wife are right now. In a sense, kind of, I don't want to say hustling backwards, but we're pouring into our children, pouring into our grandchildren through our children. Like, man, these are some of the mistakes we made. Don't go that way. Consider these paths, because I think ultimately that's going to get a better outcome. And it speaks to the importance of grandparents in the lives of children, because even in our indigenous cultures, man, we used to the grandparents in many of those cultures, the grandparents would take on the role of raising the first child. And I don't know the full gist of it, but I would imagine it has something to do with, the parents who were giving birth to their first child still being kind of young and immature, unwise, right? And so the grandparents would bear much of the responsibility for rearing the first child, and I guess maybe showing the children the ropes and so on. And these days, grandparents are not. I don't know that grandparents are as involved as we need them to be, but that type of wisdom that we get just through life, man, is so necessary in the lives of these young parents, because there's so many distractions out here, so many ways that we're going wrong, especially us with what we need right now, with what we're dealing with. Let's see. I had another idea that I wanted to share. Man, I hope I didn't forget this. But anyway, I do want to still kind of jump in before I get too far off track. I want to jump into some of the ways that parents undermine each other. And again, man, look, in any marriage or any relationship, conflict is inevitable. You're always going to have some kind of conflict. So conflict is inevitable, but combat is avoidable. Right? Conflict is something as simple as having different ideas about the same scenario. Like, I use this example. Sometimes me and my wife, we could be sitting in the living room downstairs getting ready to watch a movie or whatever, and I might say, "Man, it's a little warm in here," and she might say, "It's cold in here. I'm freezing." So she's freezing, I'm hot. Those differing ideas, that's conflict. Now, we can fight about that, or we can say, okay, well, if I'm a little hot, I can take off my hoodie and I can put on a little t-shirt. Or if she's cold, maybe she can put on a little sweater or something, or like my grandma used to say, a shawl or something, right? You can adjust, right? 70 degrees is 70 degrees. It's neither hot or cold. It's relative. It's based on how we as individuals feel in that. So that conflict in ideas doesn't have to turn into combat. And too often, these types of conflicts turn into combat. instead of us being able to kind of come to a healthy compromise, right? And many of us have these ideas about compromise as if it means like if I compromise, that means I'm losing, right? Or if she compromises, she feels like she's losing, right? But compromise is not about losing. Compromise is about understanding that the other person has just as much right to be happy about the outcome as you do, right? That's all compromise is. She has as much right to be happy about the outcome as I do. I have as much right to be happy as she does. And so, what can we do so that we can both win? And in this scenario, what I'm talking about with how it impacts the children, ultimately, we want them to win, right? So, if we're sitting here cussing each other out and going off on each other, you know, the children lose because they learn some very unhealthy ideas about what it takes to maintain harmony in a relationship. Let's see what about the children. Yeah. Oh man, my wife just reminded me that there was she got so mad at me. This one year we used to get together for Thanksgiving at my aunt's house, and it would switch from house to house. But this one particular year we were at my family's house in Oak Park, and I was a young father, man. But I was obsessed with PlayStation, and my brother was, we played Madden all the time, and man, we the children had watched their cartoon. I think they had watched, I don't know, maybe half of it or most of it or whatever. And there weren't very many TVs in the house back then. We're talking 20 plus years ago. And me and my brother, I brought my PlayStation with me. So I came in, I was like, hey kids, that's enough TV. It's time for y'all to, be out. Me and my brother, me and your uncle, we about to play this PlayStation. And man, the kids were 38 hot, but we as being who I was at the time, I didn't really have much concern, or a better word is, I didn't have much respect for how the children might be feeling or what they might be going through. The fact that they were in a scenario where they were bored. It was cold outside in Chicago. It was dark outside. They couldn't go outside to play. There's only so much playing to do in the house. They were watching TV, watching cartoons. And man, they went and told my wife, and she was hot. She was hot. She came in there. And she was fussing at me and her. We going off. We into it. Conflict that turned into combat. I wasn't backing down. She wasn't backing down. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she took the kids and left. She said, "You know what? If that's how you're gonna act, me and the kids, we out." And I think she took the children, put their coats on, and she got out of there. Left me in Oak Park with the rest of my family. But I understand, at that time, of course, I didn't understand. But looking back on it, with a more mature mind, I have a much better understanding about why she responded the way she did. Black says it's about mature negotiation for the sake of the growth and order within the marriage. Absolutely, man. And this wasn't. I didn't handle this in a mature way, right? So, when we talk about who's protective, right? There's always this idea about men providing and protecting, and this type of scenario highlights for me just how protective women can be. And my wife, I'm telling you, man, if you want to see protection in action, I don't know that there's anything more protective than watching a mother protect her children, right? And I don't know who's more protective, but I'll say this: at the very least, it rivals the protection that men offer. And in this scenario, I wasn't being protective at all about my children. My wife was the one who was being more protective. Black said, let me see. He said that was about people thinking, my fault, thinking that they are losing in compromise. And I think that's how a lot of people approach it, man. Some people are so inflexible when it comes to relationships and marriage, and not willing to compromise at all. So, and I think it's because people have a misunderstanding about what compromise really means, right? Let me wet my whistle. Excuse me. So, I want to talk a little bit about how we tend to undermine each other, how parents tend to undermine each other in how we tend to undermine each other, particularly as it relates to the children, and how it ultimately hurts the children. So one of the things that I think is really important is that, I don't think it's anything wrong with necessarily disagreeing in front of the children, but I think we got to be really mindful about how we disagree. Heated disagreements in front of the children, especially when it's something involving them, excuse me, I think that tends to be pretty toxic, and children don't learn healthy conflict resolution skills, right? But equally important, maybe even more important, children pick up on that and they'll play you against each other, right? Children will play you against each other when they learn what the soft spots are, who's more firm in this area, too hard in that area, too soft in this area. Children will play you against each other. And when children are doing that, they don't realize they think like children, right? And ultimately, they're losing. But they're losing because we lack the self-control to handle these disputes in a healthy way. So I think it's important that we show children what healthy conflict resolution looks like. So there's nothing wrong with disagreeing in front of children, but how we disagree in front of children, and especially when we cut the legs out from under each other as it relates to the children. So for instance, if I say, if one of the children were to come to me and say, "Hey, Daddy, I want to go outside," and I might say, "Well, no, you can't go outside," for whatever my reason is. And then my wife might come along and she might say, "No, they can go outside," and now I have a situation. Do I stand my ground? Do I stand firm? Do I now enter this combat with my wife because I feel like she's undermining what I might consider my authority or my position? How does this make me look in front of my children? How does that make her look? We're not presenting a united front. If nothing else, in that scenario, what should happen is, if my wife disagrees with me, or if I disagree with her in that scenario, rather than to undermine what the other person just said, we should say something like, "Hey, let me talk to you for a minute." And the children don't even have to know that we're even going off to talk about something concerning what just went down, right? So we go off into the back room, have a discussion. She might say, "Well, why don't you want the children to go outside?" And I might give my reasons, and then she might give her reasons. And if I find, we might come to a situation where the children, where we determine together that maybe her reason for wanting to go outside is better than my reason for wanting them to stay in the house, right? And so then, as the person who initially told them no, I should be the one to go back and say, "Hey guys, you know what? I changed my mind. Y'all go ahead and go outside." Rather than mom coming back out and saying, "Hey, y'all go outside." Because now that looks like dad said yes. Dad said no. Mom said yes. Dad's a jerk. Mom's the hero. Dad looks bad, right? So if whoever the one was that said no, they should be the one after the conversation takes place. In my mind, they should be the one to come back and say, "Hey, you know what, guys? I changed my mind on second thought. Have a ball. Go outside." Right? Does that make sense? Let me know what y'all think about that. Let's see. Black says, "Wifey loving that." Yep. I can dig it. Hearts. Yeah, man. Healthy conflict resolution. And this is something that is so. I think I'm gonna put together a class dealing with that too, because as simple as that might sound, we have so many challenges with resolving conflict in a healthy way, right? Just resolving disputes in a healthy way, especially as it pertains to the children. Here's another one, which is kind of still related to that. Sometimes children will ask one parent, and then they'll go back and ask the other parent, right? Without the other parent knowing. See, Tyrone says, "Makes sense." My wife says, "Yes, it makes great sense." Yeah, so sometimes my mama said, "Absolutely makes sense." Mama, you remember how you used to let me put sugar on them greens? Woo! It's your fault that I want to go to Disney World and eat up all the caramels, ma. Ah, man. Um, but sometimes, a child will come and ask one parent one thing and they don't get the answer that they like. And then they'll sneak off and say, well, you know what? Dad said no, but now I'm going to go ask mom. My grandchildren do it right now. There are certain cartoons that my children don't want my grandchildren to watch. And look, mama say I plead the fifth. There are some cartoons that my grandchildren want to watch that their parents, which are my children, don't want them to watch. And the grandchildren don't know that we know this, but we have such a good level and healthy level of communication. I mean, we talk a lot with our children, right? So this cartoon, that cartoon, these are off limits or whatever. So the children come over and they'll be like, the grandchildren come over and be like, hey, granddaddy, Nawa. They call my wife Nawa. They don't call her grandma. They call her Nawa. I forgot what that means. Something spiritual that my granddaughter gave her. But anyway, they'll ask, not knowing that we know what the real answer is, right? And so we reinforce what our children want, what their parents want, and we'll give the grandchildren a stern talking to, like, what your mother said, or what your father said. Don't ask me when you already know that the answer is no. Like, that reinforcement, that firm reinforcement is necessary, rather than saying, oh, well, we don't think it'll be harmful. We'll let them do, something other than what their parents want them to do, because we think it's okay, even though the parents think it's not okay, right? That type of undermining or usurping, is that usurping authority? That type of undermining the authority of the parents is ultimately detrimental, because the children will play you against each other, and ultimately the loser ends up being the children, right? T. Renee, good evening, sis. How you doing? Y'all do me a favor, hit that like button or that love button, share this video, invite some friends. These are conversations that I think parents and grandparents need to be in on, man, because we got to make some serious changes. Because I'm gonna tell you, man, with the way this country is going right now, we need a cultural shift. We need some new cultural guidelines, barriers, boundaries, whatever you want to call it, because some tough times ahead, family, and we got to get stronger. I'll just say it that way. Real tough times ahead, and we got to get stronger. All right. Let me see. Here's another one. Here's another way that we undermine, that some parents tend to undermine each other. Talking bad about one parent to the children. Now, this happens, I think, more when there's co-parenting, when the parents split up or divorce or whatever, right? And it's not uncommon for one parent to badmouth the other parent to the children. It's not uncommon for one parent to badmouth the other parent to the children. That conflict, that whatever reason y'all broke up or whatever's going on between y'all, that's between y'all. It's really not about the children. But what ends up happening is a couple of different things, right? When you talk bad about one parent to the child, you're really talking bad about a piece of them, half of them, a whole piece of who they are. And there's a lot of their self-worth tied into who their other parent is, especially if they have endearing feelings toward the other parent, right? So, let's say the husband or the father is mad at the mother and he got the children for the weekend. He might say, your mama, your raggedy mama, ... Well, they love their mother, right? You might not love their mama, but they love their mother. And so when you say these things, as truthful as you think you might be, even as accurate or correct as you might be, the children don't see mama that way. They love mama. Or flip it. Sometimes, hey, your raggedy daddy, he don't never whatever, right? They don't see their daddy that way. They love daddy. Daddy is the hero. Ain't nobody stronger than daddy, right? And you talking bad about daddy. Now these children feel some kind of way about a whole piece of them. Well, if daddy ain't worth a damn, what about me? Because I came from that. So if my daddy is worthless, man, what about me? Right? This is subconscious conversation that these things make children feel terrible. So again, keep in mind, man, when you have something negative to say about your mate or your ex-mate, don't say it to the children, right? Ultimately, again, children will pick up on that and they'll play you against each other. I spoke already, I think, about disregarding parenting rules, right? But I'll just kind of touch on that since I mentioned parents who might be split. Maybe I have rules in my home, and again, if we have different homes, especially if we're split, um, you know, maybe cell phone usage, right? Maybe when we're split, mom says no cell phone usage after 7 p.m. But I want to be more of a friend to my children, right? I want them to like me more or love me more. I want to be the favorite parent. So instead of her acknowledging or respecting her 7 p.m. cutoff, I say, she ain't here. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Y'all just don't tell your mama. Now you're undermining what the other parent has set in motion, right? And it could be phones, it could be video games, it could be whatever, right? The point is, if one parent sets a standard, it's imperative that we present a united front, even if we're not necessarily united in marriage or whatever, because that serves the children's best interest. You give them a sound structure that is much simpler um, to adhere to, and you don't give them the type of ammunition where they can play you against each other, right? And this is real tough, especially when we're co-parenting in different homes, and even when, here's another tricky one, man. When step parents are involved, oh man, sometimes that can be some of the most challenging situations, because now we got all these questions about, are you really parenting them the same way as you would if they were really your children, right? That kind of thing comes into play. And maybe you being too hard on my children. Like, they're our children as long as everything's good, but they're my children when, I'm questioning your motives, right? As it pertains to, maybe discipline or whatever it is, right? So I think that's real important to not undermine in disregarding what the other parent um, sets down as a rule. Here's another one, and this one is tricky, right? Because one of the let me hold on, let me wet my whistle. This is a tricky one, right? Because Chris Rock said it, right? He said one of the most powerful things that you can tell a child when they're acting up is wait till your daddy get home, right? That's a weapon that can straighten the child out like nothing else, especially if the dad is a firm disciplinarian, right? I'm not talking about beating the children. I'm just talking about just being firm as far as, making children, stick with the guidelines, stick with the rules, right? But there's a slippery slope, right? Because if you use that too much, you can almost make it a toxic relationship. You can cultivate a toxic interaction between the children and their father. If every time daddy's on his way home is wait till your daddy get home, then the children never get that endearing feeling about daddy's home, or I can't wait for daddy to get home. I've been looking forward to, I miss daddy, right? They don't get that because they're always being robbed of that, because every time daddy gets home or every time daddy's on his way home, he's getting met with bad news, and now he's got to, instead of being able to hug the kids after a long day and appreciate the, being home with them and interact with them in a jovial or light spirited way, he's got to come home in disciplinarian mode. So he's been going all day, and the only time we get to see you at the end of the day is, damn, here he comes fussing, putting us on punishment, whatever it is that he gonna do, right? So I guess a more succinct way of saying that is be mindful of using the other parent as a threat, right? Be mindful of using the other parent as a threat. Excuse me. And that's not just with fathers. There are ways that you can use mothers as a threat. Some in some scenarios, the mother is more of a disciplinarian. Wait till your mama get home. Oh, you better not let your mama find out about that. Oh, boy, maybe we better keep this. You got to be mindful of the seeds that you sow into the relationship between your child and the other parent. Right? Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense. Let me pause for the calls here. Ivan says, there is no space on the birth certificate which says best friend. It's mother, father, and the name of the child. The child can get his or her friend from school and the playground. Yeah, I don't have any argument with that. As my children are adults now. My oldest is, man, how old is Britt? 32. So there's a much more friendly arrangement now, but we're still, I mean, she'll still call, and there's still a sense of there's a high regard, there's a reverence there between us and even the oldest child, right? So it's still, she don't cuss in front of us. Maybe she's a little bit more relaxed around me because I'm playful like that, but there's still a reverence there that even though they're adults, even though they're adults, we're still not friends in the same way that I'm friends with my buddies, or she's friends with even her buddies. Like, we might still share a drink together or whatever, but there's still, and maybe it's a cultural thing. I know that there are some parents who are very different. They cuss with their kids. They get high with their kids. We ain't quite there, but there's still a very lighthearted, loving, friendly parental exchange, if that makes sense. So, but while they were younger, though, no, not so much. Not 7, 8, 10 years old, 15 years old. I'm not your friend. Even though we can laugh and joke and we can play and have a good time, I'm your father, right? I'm not your friend. So I'm definitely with you on that, Ivan. Let me see. Any other questions? Any comments? Let me see. None. Here's another one, and this kind of goes along with using parents as a threat. Saying things like, if your mama finds out, or if your daddy finds out, or those kind of things. So, like, in other words, they shouldn't be more in trouble with the other parent than they are with you. There should be as much of an issue with whatever the scenario is. Let's say the kid got suspended from school, fighting in school, got suspended from school, or maybe they were playing with their phone in class when they should have been paying attention, and you find out as a parent first. There should be as much heat or a good bit of heat coming from you. It shouldn't be, oh boy, wait till I tell your daddy. And then you take the back, like, I'm just gonna sit back here, but your daddy gonna, no. There should be some heat coming from you as the mother, or vice versa. Don't, well, when your mama find out about this, she gonna flip. Nah, man. It should be just as much heat coming from you toward that child for whatever that infraction is. If you feel like mama's gonna be super pissed off about it, then you should have a healthy bit to say in the way of correcting that behavior as the other parent, is what I'm saying. Let me see. Here's another one. Be mindful of telling your children not to tell the other parent things. Look, I'm gonna tell you this, but don't tell your daddy, or don't tell your mama. That's toxic. That's really, really toxic, right? Because again, you're creating a pact with the child, and it's in essence, it's against the other parent. Because if you're keeping secrets together against the other, it's one thing to maybe not say anything, but to go into an agreement saying, okay, look, this is what we're gonna do. We're not gonna tell your mama, or we're not gonna tell your daddy. That's cultivating a toxic arrangement. And again, I think it's sometimes we get caught in this space where one of us wants to look better than the other. But there's nothing healthier for the child than a united front from his or her parents. T. Renee says, I used to tell my cousins, don't invite my mama to the party if you expect me to. What? I used to tell my cousins, don't invite my mama to the party if you expect me to. I couldn't drop it like it's hot with Jesse May there. Yep. Oh man. What else? I had a couple other ones. Here's another one. Don't rescue your child from the consequences of the other parent. Don't rescue your child from the consequences. Don't rescue your child from the consequences of the other parent. Good evening, brother. Good evening. Good evening. What is it? She says, good evidence. I'm not sure what you mean by that, sis. Oh, she's saying good evening, everybody. Good evening, sis. Good evening. Don't rescue your child from the consequences of the other parent. Here's an example of that. Give me a second. I don't know why my throat's so dry. My grandmother, man, my mother used to work so hard when I was young. And like I said, we lived with my grandparents. And but me and my little brother, we was hell, man. We used to give my grandparents, we were rough. We were bad little boys, right? And we would give my grandparents a rough time, man. And my grandmother, she was so sweet, so sweet. And I couldn't get out of my own way, right? So we would misbehave. And my mother was a very stern disciplinarian, single mother, and she was trying to play both roles, right? She was super sweet and loving and nurturing on the one end, but my father wasn't there. And having two knucklehead sons, she kind of had to put her foot in our backside every now and then to kind of, give us that other side that we were missing from my father's absence. And my mother would come home from work and my grandmother would know, okay, your mama will be here in 20 minutes, and I'm telling, and oh man, we would cry. Oh, grandma, please don't tell, please don't tell. And my mother would come in and she would say, now, Cheryl, she would say, now, Cheryl, don't beat him, don't whoop him. But this is what they did. I said, well, why would you she gonna beat us? Why would you tell her if you don't want her to beat us? Right? Why would you tell her and then try to get in the way of what is coming our way? Right? But she had to. I understand now that she had to, because we were, man, look, my grandmother was, how old was she? She had to be every bit of 70 plus. And I'm like 10, 8, and I'm just a young knucklehead. So she had to tell my mother, right? But this is kind of like that, but it's a little different in the sense that sometimes parents will try to rescue their child from the consequences of the other parent by maybe not telling the other parent what they know the other parent should know, right? Or maybe sugarcoating what actually happened. Maybe the child got expelled from school for 10 days. And we might say, well, he got, suspended for a day or two, right? Trying to soften the blow so that maybe the other parent isn't as upset as they might otherwise be if they knew the whole truth, right? So don't rescue your child from the consequences that the other parent might be offering. Here's another one. Don't argue in front of your child about the discipline. Don't argue in front of your child about the discipline that's taking place. So maybe I got suspended from school for 2 weeks. And dad might say, all right, boy, you grounded for the rest of the school year. Maybe you grounded until I see your report card. That might be 4 or 5 weeks from now. And then the mom might say, oh, no, that's just too much. You can't do that. The boy got to have a life. Not in front of the children, right? Don't disagree about the discipline in front of the children. If anything, let that man or let that mom, mother or father, issue that discipline. And then you stand there in solidarity, in agreement, united front in front of that child. And then afterward, y'all go in the back room and y'all talk about it. Hey, don't you think that might be a little harsh? Here's what I think. And then y'all have a healthy exchange about the ideas. And again, healthy exchange requires healthy mindedness. And a lot of us, we struggle with that. But the point is that James said, I'm bringing back memories. Yeah, man. And I, look, I'm living proof of that, right? I was hard as a father. I was harsh. And my wife had to counterbalance me, man. She would always, I don't remember having too many arguments in front of the children about what the discipline was, if I remember accurately. But boy, we had more conversations in that bedroom about how wrong I was or how I overdid it or how I went too far. She was always bringing me in that back room like, baby, let me talk to you for a minute. And I'm pleading my case like, nah, this is blah, 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 blah. She'd say, no, I think you're wrong. I think you're too harsh. I think you went too far. But it was in the back room. The children didn't know that these things were being discussed. And then I would come back out and say, hey, I thought about it. And, and then I would give a I would give an adjustment to whatever I thought the punishment was or whatever disciplinary action that needed to take place. Right. Again, don't argue about discipline in front of the children. Let me see. Um, Here's another one. Don't leave your partner, your mate, in the dark about things that go on at school. Again, this is um, kind of like almost the same thing, but here's an example of what I'm talking. This is a little bit of a different play on that, right? When my wife grew up living with her grandparents too, and her mother. So she had a mother, then she had her grandmother and her grandfather. Now she was very close to her grandfather. And this was her senior year in high school. She was pregnant with our oldest daughter at the time. And the school had the choir that she was in, the school choir had a field trip, and they were going to Canada. Now, we're from Chicago. We live in Chicago. They were going to Canada. Now, mom was a little nervous about the trip. One, she was nervous. Two, she really couldn't afford the trip. So her answer right out the gate was, no, you're not going on that trip. And she didn't really explain too much about not being able to afford it. We don't like to admit that we can't afford it as much as, sometimes we just want to stand firm on, what the answer might be. So she told my wife, no Canada, you're not going to Canada. Granddad steps in. Yes, she is. She's going. And mom stands down like, okay, right? Now, ultimately, like I said, that conversation should have happened behind closed doors. And mom had, a lot of good reason to be, a little nervous about that trip. But the way it was handled, right? School event, disagreement about how, or what's going on or how it should be carried out. And then the way the disagreement took place, basically undermining or usurping the authority of, right? And he didn't, he probably one of the best men I ever met in my life. So my wife's grandfather, superhuman being, one of the men that I admire most on this planet. So I'm not bad mouthing him. He just had a very old school way of dealing with this scenario, and he meant well. He was like, hey, even though you can't afford it, I got it. So yeah, she can go. So he didn't mean it in a way like, you don't know what you're talking about. She going because I say she going. That's not quite how he meant it. It was just kind of like, she can go, and I got the money to help her go, and but the way he handled it still could have been done, better, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. Let's see, what else? Mm, uh, hmm. Let's see. Let me see. I wrote a couple things down here. Here's another thing that I think. Let me see. Let me make sure I stay on topic because I don't want to. I got several different ideas, but I don't want to veer too far off the topic. Here's one. This is what a lot of parents do. Mothers tend to be very nurturing, right? Here's now that my wife is reminding me of one, but that was that was we didn't have conflict about that, but she wanted me to tell y'all this story. So there was this one time where the children were up. They were supposed to be asleep. It's like, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go to work the next day. And they're in the room playing. I think they must have been, I don't know, 5 or 6. No, they were a little older than that. Maybe, how old were they at the time, Desi? Maybe 7 and 8 years old, something like that. And they were making noise at like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I've always I'm a real light sleeper. And this is just one example of me being pretty harsh. I'm a real light sleeper, and I wake up and I hear them in the room playing and giggling, and I'm like, damn it, what are you doing up? Why? It's bedtime. You're supposed, you know what you're going to do? Here's what you're going to do. Because you woke me up and I have such a hard time going to sleep, I'm going to show you why it's important not to wake me up when I'm asleep, especially when I got to go to work in the morning. What you're going to do is you're going to stand by my bedside and you're going to stand here until I fall asleep. You're going to watch me. You're going to observe how long it takes me to fall asleep. And you better not leave here until I'm sound asleep. Well, Daddy, how are we supposed to know when you sleep? You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. And I don't know how long it took me to fall asleep. I don't know how long they stood there, but we laugh about that to this day. But I made them stand there. It could have easily taken me 15, 20 minutes to fall back to sleep. But that's a lifetime to an 8-year-old child, right? So I made them stand there. And my wife, she thought it was harsh, but she didn't say a thing. She just told me later that she thought it was a bit harsh. But we didn't have any conflict about it. There was no argument about it or whatever. But here's where was I going to go? Here's one thing that a lot of parents tend to have conflict about. Let me see what James say. He said, "You're right, brother, because the child will notice that the parent who stops the discipline from the other parent, and sometimes they will play on that." Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, they will. Here's one thing that a lot of parents fight about: children sleeping in the bed. Some parents will allow children to sleep in the bed with them 8, 10, 12. I've heard stories as late as 12 years old, sleeping in the bed because the children don't want to sleep in their own room, in their own bed. And this tends to create a good bit of conflict because, of course, fathers don't typically want children in the bed with us. But a lot of mothers are like, "Oh, well, that's my baby, let them on in here," right? And if you got enough children, 2, 3 children trying to sleep in the bed, and dad is frustrated and grunting, and this can cause conflict, right? There has to be a healthy conversation that takes place with this type of scenarios. Here's my 2 cents on that. First of all, I think it's strange if you got, 8, 9-year-old children sleeping in the bed with you, right? It's different if we having a movie night and every in my room and you fall asleep in my bed. That's a different conversation than you routinely sleeping in my bed. So here's what I say about that. The only way children are welcome to routinely sleep in the bed with us is if we both agree on it. If we both think it's cool, then do you. But if one says yes and the other one says no, the answer is no. And I don't care which one it is. If mom says yes and dad says no, the answer is no. If dad says yes and mom says no, the answer is no. If we're not in alignment on having this crowd in our bedroom, having all this company in the bed with us, the answer is no. That's the way I see it. But that tends to cause a lot of conflict. And I don't think I don't know. I do understand that up until the child is, maybe a year or two old, sometimes, mothers may want to, there's such thing as SIDS, right? Sudden infant death syndrome. There are children who do die prematurely when they sleep alone. So some mothers are really concerned about that and extra protective and guarding against that. I understand that. But I think that stops at what, maybe a year old. I think they're pretty much out of the danger zone at about a year old. And sometimes the children have nightmares, and so maybe at 1 or 2, I don't know, but at a relatively young age, I think that should be, for me, we got to get rid of that. So by the time I might even let you fall asleep in my bed, but you're gonna wake up in your own bed, type of thing, right? Because I need my space. That's what I'm saying. You see, what else? What else do I have written here? Here's one. Making fun of your mate or making fun of the other parent in front of the children. Now, play is one thing. We can play, and as long as everybody's laughing, great joke, right? You might poke fun about how big my head is. And as long as I'm laughing, great joke. I don't mind. Everybody, joke's on me, right? Everybody get a laugh on me. No problem. But I'm talking about joking at the expense of the other person, right? Joking about maybe how stupid dad is or how clumsy mom is. Like jokes that make the other person, the other parent feel bad or that jokes that diminish the other parent, right? That type of stuff, man, is unacceptable. Especially, it's unacceptable even if the children are not around. I don't have any tolerance for that anyway. But especially in front of the children, especially in front of the children, don't joke at the other parent's expense in ways that make the other parent feel bad when the children are around. And here's another one. Um, don't complain about the other person, the other parent, to your friends or to your children. Let me say it this way. Like, you know how we talk to our friends, right? Don't complain to your friends about your mate, about your partner, when your children can hear you. Girl, he's so stupid. I don't know that. Like, you're not talking to the children, but the children can hear you, right? He's so stupid. I don't know why he always da 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 da, da, right? Man, that girl, she can't do nothing right. I don't know why she blah 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 blah. Not in front of. If the children can hear you, you foul anyway, right? You foul anyway when if you're doing, going that extra mile talking about how stupid or how, incompetent, your mate is. But if you're doing that in front of the children, man, that's next level stupid. That's next level foul, right? Don't do that in front of in earshot of the children, and then certainly don't do it to the children. I don't know why your daddy's so damn stupid. I don't know why he can't do nothing right. I don't know why your mama, you know, she don't clean this house worth a damn, whatever it is, right? Not to the children, not in front of the children. None of that diminishing the other person, right? Making the other person, dimming the other person's light, right? And a lot of people do that to make themselves feel better, right? But I don't have to decrease for you to increase. Just do your thing and shine, right? You don't have to shine at my expense. That's what I'm saying. Let me see. Any questions? I'm just sitting here rambling. I ain't asking no questions. What y'all think about what I said so far? What do you think? Any thoughts, questions, comments? Last Don, what's good, family? Miss Tyra, how you doing, sis? How you doing? Blissful Blue, Lily, what's happening, family? Brother King James on Instagram. I see you. Got my IG family in the building. That's all I have for y'all, fam. I just kind of wanted to share some of that because me and the wife were talking about this last night, and there's a lot of this going on. There's a lot of conflict that's taking place between parents, and ultimately, who's losing is the child. The children are losing because our children do not. Listen, man. So many relationships. You'd be surprised how many relationships I'm helping people through with basic conflict resolution, right? Basic conflict resolution. And these are things that we should be able to observe in our parents as we're growing up. But you know how it is, 80% of us are growing up in single parent households. And so we don't get to see that healthy interaction between our parents. As a matter of fact, I'll go so far as to say um, much of what we're experiencing in the interaction between our parents is unhealthy interactions. Excuse me, much of what we're experiencing, much of what we're witnessing is toxic interaction between our parents. And a lot of us don't know how to do healthy. A lot of us, the only type of interaction we know how to engage in with our mate is the toxic kind. A lot of us think yelling is okay. We think it's okay to yell. My mama did it. That's all my mom. I'm not saying my mama did. I'm just saying this is the mindset of a lot of people. This is all I saw my mama do, or this is what I saw my daddy do, and they got along just fine. This is what a lot of people are thinking. My mom and daddy did it. They did. They yelled at each other. They cussed each other out, and they get along just fine. They still married today. Don't confuse a 30-year marriage just because a couple was together for 30 years. Don't mean that they're winning for 30 years. You understand what I'm saying? Like, just because a couple has 30 years doesn't mean that they're experiencing a successful marriage. Time does not equate to success, is what I'm saying. There are people who have been married 20, 30 plus years and they can't stand each other. That's not a successful marriage. All right? A successful marriage is one in which both people appreciate the arrangement and they're both happy about the outcomes that they're experiencing. That's a successful marriage. I don't care if you're on year one, if you're in year 1 or 3, or if you're in your 33rd year, right? What we're talking about is outcomes, and we're talking about harmony, and we're talking about mutually beneficial arrangements that we can both appreciate. That's what a successful marriage is, not just 30 years or et cetera, et cetera. Let's see, Desi says, and in harmony. Yep, yep, yep. That's exactly what I'm saying. And real talk, man, like I see people out here, everybody on social media is a relationship expert. Everybody is a relationship expert. I see so much content, and most of the people are single or multiple divorces, right? Or in toxic arrangements as they speak. Because you can Google what a healthy relationship is, and people got all these bullet points and things like that, and they're very inflexible. Well, this is how men behave, and men do this, and men are masculine. Masculine behavior is this, and feminine behavior is this. You got men out here trying to out argue women about how women are supposed to be, and women out here trying to out argue men about how men are supposed to be. And most people don't know what the hell they're talking about. Most people, when it comes to relationships, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. You know why? Because they've never even seen it. They've never even seen, outside of what they might have seen on the Cosby Show, maybe Good Times, that might be close. Most people don't know what the hell they're talking about because they've never seen a healthy arrangement and they've never experienced one. They've never experienced one. We had my little cousin came to stay with us she was with us. How long was Naya with us? For a couple of weeks, Desi? 3 weeks maybe. And she swore up and down that we acted like a white family. She said, "Y'all act like a white family." I said, "A white family? Why you say?" I'm kind of on one. This was, man, maybe 10, 12 years ago. So on the one hand, I'm kind of offended because you questioning my blackness. But on the other hand, I'm kind of amused because I'm like, that's funny to me. What are you talking about? So I wanted her to explain, what do you mean we act like a white family? She said, y'all sit down and eat dinner together. Y'all play board games together. Y'all playing Monopoly and watching movies together and laughing. Y'all being phony. She thought we were being phony because we were doing things like eating dinner together. I'm talking about sitting at the dinner table, not, somebody taking the plate to the back room. Everybody going into their own room with their own dinner plates. Right? We all sat at the dinner table together. And then after dinner was over, some nights we would break out the Monopoly board or Life or whatever board game we wanted to play. And we would literally sit there and play games together as a family. She had never witnessed or experienced a healthy family arrangement. Not between her mom and daddy, not between her grandparents. She had never seen it. So, translation, in her mind, we act like white folks. We ain't real. We ain't keeping it real. We just do. Maybe she thought we were just doing that because she was there. Right. And this is what I'm saying. And she's I'm not saying she's a bad person. That's not my point. My point is, many people who have not seen what a healthy relationship is, who have not experienced what a healthy relationship is, these are a lot of your experts. These are a lot of your people out here giving relationship advice right now, and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't. So I come out here and I try to put my clean glass of water next to their glass of water, and you drink from both, and whichever one benefits you the most, good for you. If you like what I'm rocking with, then good. If you like what they saying, good. But I say, the important thing is that you try your best to find a healthy arrangement. And if you feel like I can benefit you and help your marriage, feel free to email me. You can reach me right here on Facebook, inbox me. This is what I do, and I enjoy doing it. So feel free to inbox me here. Tell a friend or whatever, or you can email me at info@theconditionsoflove.com. Does he put that in the comments? info@theconditionsoflove.com. Why is it the conditions of love? Because love is conditional. And in order to win at love, in order to win at your relationship, you got to know the conditions, man. You got to know the conditions. And the conditions vary, right? Like weather outside. Conditions may vary. So, part of those conditions is healthy levels of communication, thoughtfulness, You have to have a healthy level of intimacy. There has to be a healthy level of compassion. There has to be trust. There has to be compromise. There has to be respect. Now, these things might look different from one relationship to the next. Respect in one relationship might look different than respect in my relationship. It's not important that your relationship looks like mine. You have to find out what's healthy for your arrangement, what respect looks like in your arrangement, right? And so, but the point is, if you remove respect, if you remove any of those conditions that I just laid out, your relationship is bound to suffer. Your relationship is bound to suffer. So all of those ingredients are necessary: intimacy, respect, thoughtfulness, compassion, respect, compromise, trust, complementarity, thoughtfulness, affection. Like all of these things are necessary for you to get the relationship that you want, but it's going to look different for everybody because we're not the same, right? So what I help couples do is tailor their relationship toward their specific needs, not based on what mine looks like. Because my blueprint, as far as how I show thoughtfulness to my wife, might not work for how you show thoughtfulness to your wife, right? My wife don't like chocolate. Maybe your wife loves chocolate. My wife likes flowers. I might bring my wife flowers, and you might be trying to be like me, trying to bring your wife flowers, and your wife might hate flowers. But you can be thoughtful to your wife by maybe getting her a box of chocolates. You see what I'm saying? Like it's gonna be different. And that's a very watered down explanation, but the point is still the same. Thoughtfulness in your relationship, respecting your relationship, compassion, etc., is gonna look different from one relationship to the next. And that's what I help people do in order to get from one level to the next. So email me at info@theconditionsoflove.com if you feel like I can help you find harmony in your relationship. If you want to show some support for what we do here, feel free to cash at me at $Love Alchemist 11 $Love Alchemist 11. You can show your support for what I do with that. Also, don't forget to go to my YouTube page. I got to start getting that one going again. Go to my Love Alchemist YouTube page, and I'm gonna start going live a little bit more on there and sharing with the family there, because I think more people have to start seeing what healthy relationship ideas actually look like. Because a lot of us, like I said, man, we've never seen it. Here's an example. Let me share this with you, and I'm gonna let y'all out. I mean, y'all been rocking with me for over an hour. I appreciate that. I'm gonna share this one idea, and I'm gonna be out. There's there's several pastors. I don't want to say any names, but I used to listen to several pastors online and several relationship people with content, and there's always this promotion going on of this is how women are, and this is how men behave, this is how men think, this is how women behave, and this is how women think. Here's where I'm going. For every man that you can find who thinks a certain way or behaves a certain way, you can almost find an equivalent number of women who think that way or behave that way. If not an equivalent level number, certainly a robust number, right? There are a lot of women out here who think in ways and rationalize in ways that a lot of men do, and vice versa. There are a lot of men who are much more compassionate and much more thoughtful and much more caring and concerned, right? Much more merciful is the word I used earlier. So the point that I'm making is one of the big mistakes that we make when we approach these relationships is thinking that there's a cookie cutter way for men to respond or behave and a cookie cutter way that women are behaving. It's not important how all women behave. It's not important for me to understand how all women act and how all women think. What's important for me is to understand how my woman acts and thinks and feels and behaves. What's important is that she understands how I think, how I rationalize, how I behave, what's important to me. Not all men, that's irrelevant. My next door neighbor might not think, feel, behave, or see things at all like I do. How men think is irrelevant. How I think is what's important to her. You understand what I'm saying? Am I making sense? So That's just one of the ways how we got so many people flooding the game and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So anyway, without further ado, family, like I said, man, I appreciate y'all. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And for that, I'm eternally thankful. Love y'all, family. Peace out. Peace out. I love that little thing, man. All right, family. Good night.